Hey, welcome back to the Big Ranch Show. As always, thank you for joining me. If you could, hit that subscribe button down below. Let's get right to it. SpongeBob SquarePants, a show that's been on the air for 20 years. I've been watching it for 20 years myself, for the better part of that time anyway. I've missed none of the episodes at this point. I've watched every single one of them, probably multiple times at this point. So I've been a fan of the show for a long time, so maybe I'm a little biased here. But there is a woman out there that appears to be trying to have the show shut down, based on an article she wrote. Her name is Holly M. Baker, professor at the University of Washington. And I want to make it very clear. I have nothing but love and support for the indigenous people of this world who have been displaced by people who didn't believe they belonged, who thought they just had the right to move anybody they wanted to wherever they wanted. But to claim that SpongeBob SquarePants has anything to do with what the U.S. military did to the indigenous people of the Pacific Ocean during the Cold War, it's beyond anything I could imagine that anyone could believe. Her argument is based on fan fiction, fan theory, that maybe Bikini Bottom is situated in the Bikini Atoll of the Marshall Islands. An island where we did some very disgusting shit. Where we forced indigenous people of this island to other parts of the world, other islands even, and stuff like that, in order to use it for a nuclear testing site, thus making the entire island uninhabitable. And yes, that is totally heart-wrenching. But to say that that's what it was intended by the show, or that that's exactly where the show takes place, no one knows. It's called fan fiction for a reason, you idiot. No one knows where SpongeBob really takes place. We can assume it at least takes place in the Pacific Ocean. We cannot, on the other hand, say that we know exactly where in the Pacific Ocean. She goes on to say that it's rife with cultural appropriation, from Hawaiian-style shirts to tikis, pineapple houses, and Easter Island heads. And that covers a vast swath of the Pacific Ocean. From Hawaii to Easter Island. But what gets me the most is this woman has had years, decades, to come forward and talk about this. But clearly she's never watched TV, never watched the show. And she just decided she'd find something to rail on so she could try to get a name for herself. That's what she wanted to do. And in the process, trying to get a kids show that kids and adults alike across this entire globe love watching. I believe she's wrong to base an entire argument on fan theory and fan fiction. Now, are those stereotypical things of the Pacific Ocean? Yes. Do I consider it cultural appropriation? No, not really. Not if the characters live in the region. Is it stereotypical? Yes. Cultural appropriation? Yeah, not so much. But this is America, for crying out loud. We appropriate other cultures every day. They call us the Great Melting Pot for a reason. We are multiple cultures, multiple peoples, all inside one border. Now, she says she understands that colonialization may not have had anything to do with what the creators of the show intended. But she says she's upset by the lack of acknowledgement that Bikini Bottom and the Bikini Atoll were not for the writers' taking. Well, one, Bikini Atoll may not have been there for the creators' taking. But guess what? Bikini Bottom is a fictional little town or city, depending on which episode you watch. And then she goes on to call it misogynistic, saying that there's an imbalance between male and female characters. The hell? You've got a lot of female characters on that show. A lot of them. Some that are everyday characters, and some that you just see in the background sometimes, and some that actually speak. Like two of the most notable behind the scenes kind of people or characters, the people that you don't see very often, Mabel and a woman named Shelley. Those are just some names from the people in the background that you always hear from occasionally. But let's talk about some of the women that are actually more a major part of the show. Mrs. Puff, SpongeBob's boating school instructor, who can't stand SpongeBob, but SpongeBob thinks it's the best thing since sliced bread. Karen, the evil guy, his name is Plankton, by the way. The evil guy has a computer wife known as Karen. She is a female by gender. You've got Pearl. Pearl is the well daughter of Mr. Krabs, the owner of the Krusty Krab, who uses a crab pot, basically, as a restaurant, or lobster trap or something like that, as a restaurant. How do you get the idea that there's not women on the show? Sandy Cheeks, seen in almost every episode, who she refers to as a token female on the show, when there's at least half a dozen females on that show that are important to the storyline of the entire show. But what gets me is she even gets upset at the theme song. She gets mad at the theme song because it mentions nautical nonsense. Now, if what I just mentioned to you, just by some of the characters in the show, is that not already nonsense? They're not, the creators and the people that made the song aren't saying that the people of the Pacific are nonsense. They're saying what goes on in their show is nonsense. A crab adopts a whale as a child. A squirrel lives under the sea. And this is supposed to be something to fight about? To be upset about? Because they mention it's not nautical nonsense? The show is nonsense. Are you stupid? And last but not least, she goes on to say that using the name Bob, SpongeBob, is also problematic because you're not using a culturally appropriate character. Well, I'm sorry. I'm going to guess that SpongeBob just kind of rolled off the tongue. He's a sponge. And they're trying to make it seem as if he's a male. So, SpongeBob rolls off the tongue. So, if you have a problem with this show, then you're going to have a really rough life. You're going to live a life where you're constantly obsessed and upset and outraged by everything you ever see or hear. Clearly, you haven't turned on the television before. You've never watched the show, Miss Baker. That's what's clear to me. If you have and you happen to see this video, please leave a comment down below. Let me know. Hit me up on Twitter at KeckJacob. Email me at thetexasliberal@gmail.com, or even at Big Ranch Show at gmail.com. Hit me up on all those social medias. Hell, hit me up on the Facebook page for the Big Ranch Show. I would love to do an interview with you and sit down and see if you've ever actually even watched this show, and why you seem like you don't care that millions of people love this show just in America, not mentioning all the people around the world that watch the show in so many different languages. The hours of entertainment this show has brought people. Why you would want to tear that apart, and why you waited so damn long to write an article over it, waiting until the creator of the show could not answer to your crappy article. What it was is you knew he'd probably beat back. And that's why you held off. You waited until the man was dead. And I find that to be offensive. That you waited until the man was dead to sit there and say anything about it. Proving that you don't give a damn about cultural appropriation. You don't give a damn about the people of the Pacific. All you care about is making a name for yourself. With that said, folks, this has been The Big Ranch Show. I've been your host, Jacob Keck. I'll see you down the road.